Welcome to In the Green Chair, an interview series by Relay Education. In each episode, we sit down with a professional who's working the green economy to learn about their story.
Relay is a Canadian charity that delivers renewable energy and environmental education programs with the goal of creating change for a greener future and fostering the next generation of green leaders.
Throughout the series, you'll hear from professionals across a wide range of fields and sectors who all work in what we consider to be a green-collar career. I'm your host today, and today I'm joined by my co-host Andrew. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Dave. I'm Andrew. I'm the Green Careers Program Manager at Relay Education.
Today's guest in the Green Chair is Melinda Zytaruk. She is the CEO of Tooketree Passive Homes and General Manager of the Fourth Pig Worker Co-op. Melinda is on the board of Lake of Bays Renewable Energy Cooperative, and she is a certified passive house builder and green design advocate. Welcome to the Green Chair, Melinda.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation.
I was reading about your education, and it spans many different schools and certificates. I wanted to know, when you started your first year of post-secondary, did you have a master plan, a long-term plan of where you'd get all these different experiences, or did you decide to get more certifications along the way?
Absolutely not. Some days I feel like I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. When I started post-secondary education, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So what I ended up doing is going into philosophy, because I figured, well, if I could at least learn how to think better, then maybe that would help me out in whatever I ended up doing. And so I studied philosophy and women's studies in my undergraduate, and that was a great launch for critical thinking skills, I do recommend philosophy to anybody who isn't sure what they want to do. Did not have a major plan, but I always knew that I wanted to do something to make the world better.
Speaking of women's studies, as a woman in the building industry, what has been your experience, and what advice do you have for other women who are interested in this field?
I would encourage women to get into the construction field and into the trades and into the building sector. I was fortunate enough that my entry into the building sector was in the alternative building world rather than the conventional building world, I guess you could say. My first experiences in construction were on job sites that were building straw bale homes or installing solar panels. So I have found that the building world that is open to and is actively thinking about different and better ways of building that's more sustainable for the world is also tends to be more diverse. That said, it hasn't always been easy, and there's certainly, construction has a very bad reputation for equity and gender equity and the way it treats women. But I've seen changes since I've been in the sector, and we do need to change the way we build and the way we work, because you belong. We need you.
It's interesting. Interesting to hear that the kind of forward thinking on the building side is also forward thinking in employment. It makes sense. They kind of go hand in hand. You didn't plan on, initially getting into green building. Was there a defining moment when you realized, okay, this is the industry I want to be a part of?
I don't know if there's a defining moment, but I think when I did go and get training on the design and installation of renewable energy systems, training went along with that in terms of passive solar design and natural building materials and healthy building materials. I saw that there was an opportunity to get involved that wasn't just working from an advocacy perspective, but also afforded the opportunity to see what you'd done at the end of the day. And I really gravitated towards that. I had worked in some sectors where the focus was on trying to stop something bad from happening rather than trying to build something good. And it can be really tiring. It's important work, but I found that I felt like I would have more resilience and more personal stamina if I could also see something that I had produced. And
so it was almost twofold. You still got to push the limits on what you thought the world should look like, and also in doing so you were creating examples of your work in the real world. Could you just explain the passive house and why it's different than regular buildings?
Sure. You might see passive house as a term used differently. One way that we use the word passive house to refer to an energy efficient building standard that mostly started in Europe. Some inspiration from Canadian work on super insulated homes was part of developing that standard. That's a German standard and has been adopted worldwide and adapted in North America and in the US as well. You do an energy model of the home when you're in the design phase, and you know that you have to be able to achieve a certain minimum amount of heating and cooling energy to put into that house and general use energy in order to achieve the certification. You might need to, add more insulation or put in better windows as you're designing the home to make sure that you're meeting that low energy use target. Another way is people sometimes say passive house is in the term of passive solar, the world of passive solar, which is using the energy from the sun to heat and cool your home. But the passive house homes that we build do still have mechanical ventilation and do still have heating and cooling systems, especially in our climate. In Ontario and Canada, it's very few places you can build a home that would be comfortable all year round in every single room without some sort of heating system. And we do want fresh air brought into our homes, so we use mechanical ventilation.
It sounds like a very holistic approach to building. You're taking into consideration all of these different factors, not just sustainable building materials or your crew and who you're hiring, but even is this going to be safe for the person living inside of it? Because you think that it would be illegal to have unsafe homes and sell it and rent it out to people, and yet people still do that.
Absolutely. The amount of substandard housing that exists in Canada is travesty, and it's completely unnecessary. Some recent research on substandard housing in Toronto done by York University showing that there's a huge correlation of substandard housing and newcomers and racialized communities. It's a shame for the city. It should never have occurred. A lot of bad policy decisions that don't need to be made, and fortunately we can fix it, but it's an urgent need. As you said, the holistic approach is really necessary.
Without that policy in place, we end up with these substandard housing. Are there any goals, either provincially or federally, that you know of, or legislation that is there or maybe should be in place?
There's some really neat examples that are happening. Hopefully those will continue to build. Some counties and regions are requiring passive house certification for all of their buildings that get any funding. And that's an easy thing for municipality to require without costing them anything, just requiring that those buildings are built well. One municipality, I believe so far, hopefully more to follow, that is offering an incentive for builders who sequester carbon or reduce the amount of carbon that they put into the building, so that they are building with lower impact materials. So that would be something like using cellulose recycled newsprint insulation rather than using spray foam insulation that has lots of chemicals in it and can be very bad for our health. We have, I think just yesterday, a federal government announcement of 1 million free blower door test energy audits for homes in Canada, which will help give people the information they need to make good decisions on energy efficiency upgrades that they can do to their home. And energy auditors it's an excellent career, it's an excellent job. It's such an important skill to be able to model a home, so that hopefully will get rolled out and people will have access to that. I think one of the most exciting things is there is more and more talk about regenerative building. Regenerative building is building homes and communities that doesn't just do less harm, but actually works to try to fix communities, make them more livable, make them contributors to overall well-being instead of just less bad for our well-being.
So it sounds like there is more on the municipal level that's being done. Maybe the easiest way to enact changes in that community and municipal level, I guess. When it comes to, making a new house or a new building from scratch, from the ground up, can you kind of run through the general process of how that goes from start to finish?
One of the first things we do is put together the team of people that are going to be involved in the home construction project. So that includes whoever's going to live in the home or the building in the space. Maybe there's an engineer or an architect, an energy advisor and modeler, and ourselves as the builder. And we follow a process called integrated project delivery, which means that we, rather than have the architect go away and design a home that they think is best, we all work together as a team to come up with something that we all agree meets the objective for its budget, for its schedule, the attributes that it needs to have, and for the health and well-being of the occupants. I would say that upfront planning process is crucial for a passive house, but it improves the outcomes for any project. And then permits are obtained. If we were building, say, a small family home, it might take 8 to 12 months for the whole construction phase. The first part of construction is normally the foundation, and in foundations we are trying to reduce the amount of concrete that we use. Sometimes we use a foundation called helical piles, which is basically steel screws that the house can sit on. Then creating an airtight envelope, and one of the ways that we do that if we're building new construction is with Tooketree panels, we have a panelized system that is built inside a factory. So we're building the walls and the floor and the roof inside a factory and insulating them and making them airtight, and then delivering panels that might be sort of 4 to 20 feet long to the site, assembling that in a day, maybe. Yeah, and then finishes, roof, flooring, all kitchens, all the fun stuff gets done, and hopefully people get to move in. And commissioning is a big part of the end of the construction. When we're done, we make sure that all the systems work, that the HVAC system, heating, ventilation, air conditioning system is balanced. So the pressure inside the house is the same as is neutral, same as outside. There's lots of inspections throughout construction as well.
If you could design a dream building and there was no limitations, so no borders, budget, zoning laws, what would you build and where would you build it?
I've been doing so many practical things lately. I haven't been exercising the dreaming part of my mind, so that's a fantastic question to ask. It would definitely be a multi-use building. It would have art and community and places for people to eat together when we can be together. A nice mix of private and shared space. I really like the work that's being done in the co-housing sector. The land, where it would be built on, somewhere where people have views of trees and water and rocks or the environment. And the land would be part of a community land trust. Ownership structure created somehow that was consistent with the Indigenous communities' rights to land and think about use of land rather than ownership. Those are some of the key elements that come to mind, and a great big harvest table where people can share a meal around, which I think we're all craving. A shared.
I like the sound of that. When you say like community land trust, could you kind of break that down and explain?
And there's different financial models. The main element of the community land trust that, and I'm still doing lots of learning about them as well, but is that rather than have land be something that is owned by an individual, used as investments to sell, to make profit, land is recognized as being something that we all have to share as a commons and take care of. But the people could own the homes that they live in, or organizations or businesses could own the buildings on the land, but they would never have the opportunity to sell the land and turn it into something that the community land trust didn't approve of. I would suggest if people are in Toronto, they could check out the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust, which is doing some amazing work.
Okay, so just by not owning the land, you're also protecting the land.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay. Rather than, there's some people who would argue that if in order to protect something, you have to give it an economic value. But I would argue that in order to protect something, we have to see it as something that we all have a common interest in and protect it from being something that is monetized.
Right.
What do you see as a major area of growth in the, I'll just call it the sustainable building industry, but where is the growth you see in the next decade?
Housing needs an enormous amount of work, and housing is, and our built environment is a huge source of our greenhouse gas emissions and our carbon emissions. So I see that there will be a huge growth in looking at how do we maximize our benefit with the houses that we're building. I've seen in the last couple of years such a huge shift from even people in the environmentally friendly and energy efficient sector saying that materials didn't matter. We could build out of whatever we wanted. It was just making sure that the house didn't use very much energy once it was operating was what's important, to a full swing in the other direction, and people recognizing that a holistic approach is absolutely required. And there's going to be huge growth in renovations that are deep renovations and trying to really tackle making the home significantly better. The way that we've reacted and adapted to the pandemic will teach us that that we can do bold things and we can make huge changes in a short amount of time, and encourage people to think big.
I feel like now that more people are becoming aware, younger generations, but also the older generations too. And once we have that passion there from the people, the sky's the limit. Do you know of any post-secondary schools or programs, either in Ontario or anywhere in Canada, that are offer educational pathways to young people interested in sustainable building and in becoming a passive home certified builder?
Yeah, there's some great programs out there. In terms of the colleges and universities, the George Brown and Mohawk and Seneca, almost every college these days has a environmentally friendly renovation program and builder training program or construction management program. So definitely check out the colleges. There's also a place called the Endeavor Center in Peterborough that offers shorter workshops for people to take on things like clay plaster for finishing your home or building a straw bale home.
When the Fourth Pig is hiring for those entry-level positions, you look for that college diploma in sustainable building?
We're looking for people who have a growth mindset, who are looking to work together collaboratively. Any experience in building is fantastic.
Is there one part about a green future that really gets you excited?
We have such these huge issues to solve and they can feel daunting, like poverty and homelessness and food insecurity and housing insecurity and racism and inequities everywhere. And I think all of these problems that we have are being created by the same systems. And so the vision of the future, or the green thing that makes me most excited, I think, is a real transformation of whether you call it the economy, but how we decide to make decisions together and what we decide to value. And there's so many people doing great works, and we like donut economics. For anybody who's thinking of studying economics, go check that out. There's people doing really neat things and starting to fray away at the edges and cause some big cracks and make some light shine in.
Well, speaking of alternative economies, the Fourth Pig and Lake of Bays Renewable Energy are both cooperatives. Could you define what a cooperative or a co-op is?
So a co-op is basically a group of people who have formed to solve a problem and to find a solution together. And in Ontario, we have legislation that we incorporate under as a business or an organization. So it's another way of doing business, and is based on the 7 international principles of cooperation. And often in regular businesses, if you have ownership of, say, 60% of the shares of the business, then you get to make the decisions because you have a majority of the ownership of the business. Whereas in a co-op, it's one member, one vote. And everybody in the co-op, regardless of how much they have invested in time or money in the business, in the organization, they all have the same equal say in terms of making decisions about how the co-op is run. So it's more democratic. And the Lake of Bays Renewable Energy Co-op is a co-op that is made up of about 200 members of the community up here in Lake of Bays who own a 50 kilowatt photovoltaic solar system on the local community center. And co-ops, instead of having, share corporations, they are legislated to have the profitability of the shareholders be their number one priority. Whereas co-ops, we are legislated to have concern for community and for economic participation of our members and education and information sharing. We still need to remain economically viable and pay ourselves and do all that work, but it's not the lens through which we make decisions all the time.
Thank you for joining us today in the Green Chair. And where can we find your work online?
Thanks. Yeah, you can go to fourthpig.org. That's fourthpig.org for the website of Fourth Pig Green and Natural Construction, Fourth Pig Worker Co-op, and tooketree.com, TOOKETREE.com for Tooketree passive homes.
We hope you enjoyed learning about the different paths people take to working in the green economy.
Follow us on social media at Relay Education and check out our website, relayeducation.com, to learn more.